Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
What was more satisfying, Brad? Seeing the Michigan flag being planted in the middle of the O in OSU's field, or seeing Alex Nedeljkovic wearing the Michigan gear because he had a bet with Dylan Larkin? Ned, obviously an OSU fan from Ohio, and seeing him wear the maize and blue. Either one of those was just like the perfect Red Wings Michigan fans day after, just immersed in the moment from Michigan's victory over Ohio State.
There's no bad answer here.
No, there's
really
no
is
wrong
not.
answer. I know there's a lot of State fans who are immediately going to be pissed off and have probably already turned off the episode, but look, this is, someone joked, they were like, this is Michigan's Super Bowl, or like Michigan doesn't even care if they win the national title. And I don't want to say that's true, but it sure feels like Michigan somehow won the Super Bowl.
It's not true, but it's close.
Other good news, by popular demand, we had to listen to the people. The Mickey Redmond style Winged Wheel Podcast flannels that are special custom runs in support of the Jamie Daniels Foundation back in stock. wingedwheelpodcast.com/shop. If you want to go get yours, it's another limited run. There's only so many of these that we can produce. Last time we got enough where we thought it would last us at like half the season at least, if not more. They were gone, was it 3 days or something like that? We were able to advertise them for one episode before they were all gone. So this may be our one episode. So if you want them, get them. They go fast. wingedwheelpodcast.com/shop. They're officially approved by Mickey Redmond, Winged Wheel Podcast, custom flannels, and it's a portion of the proceeds, as much as we can, is in support of the Jamie Daniels Foundation. Mick rocks one. Ken has rocked one on air for Bally Sports Detroit. And yeah, it's probably my favorite piece of apparel that we've ever produced. Oh, also, someone said, when are you going to make black mugs, like black mugs with the logo? Because before it was like a white mug with like a black background behind the logo. Anyways, there's black mugs, like actual black glossy mugs with our logo on it. We're going to have them in studio soon, but those are also on the shop. All that said, the Detroit Red Wings have done quite enough since last episode to have us talk about it. So, folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings, NHL hockey, and the world of hockey beyond. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And Evan's not here, but we have our Mark Stahl 1000 shirt sitting in the middle chair today, so definitely the best looking of us three. What we have for you on the docket today is we're going to recap the Red Wings' most recent win against the Arizona Coyotes, which was an incredibly hyped up game. And I'm not even saying that ironically. That was genuinely a massive win, and the crowd was about to blow the roof off of the LCA. We'll be talking about Larkin's winner, Red Hot Hronek. There you go, Brad. Andrew Copp had himself a great game. The atmosphere in the LCA, some important stats about where the Red Wings are now, and any other storylines about Detroit. We'll also be talking about something that started last week, and we expected the story to progress, but it hasn't really. And that's Magnus Hellberg, who the Red Wings claimed off waivers, and that still has to develop. So we'll be taking a look at that. We're going to take a look at the NHL playoff picture, not just Detroit's odds of making it, but from everyone across the league, and whatever else comes up before overtime. Before that, something really, really important. This is going to be the last episode that's going to air before Hot Stove Stories featuring Mick and Ken on Thursday, December 1st. It's a morning event from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. at Motor City Casino in Detroit. Folks, I really want to see everyone pack the room in there. What it is, it's a event hosted by myself. Mickey Redmond and Ken Daniels will be there, as well as Chris Osgood, Chris Draper, Dan O'Halloran, and Wes McCauley from the refereeing world. So between those four, the stories are going to be incredible and insightful and colorful, to say the least. I have been game planning with Ken. We've been talking about some of the different things that we might hear there, and I mean it when I say these are going to be some of the best hockey stories, and a lot of them unheard before. You put those four in a room, and I'm going to have to do no talking at all. I'm just going to say go, and it's going to be just like Winged Wheel Podcast nights, actually, Brad. We just sit there and shut up, really. There's going to be a live Q&A, discussion between everyone. There's going to be a live auction for some really, really great items, some VIP ticket packages and such. There's also a silent auction happening right now until December 1st. It ends in the morning at 9:45 a.m. That's at jamiedanielsfoundation.org. The whole event is in benefit of the Jamie Daniels Foundation and their fight against substance use disorder. So it goes to a really great cause. Those NHL and refereeing legends in the room, it's going to be a fantastic time. Breakfast is included, of course. So again, jamiedanielsfoundation.org. Bid on the great items on the silent auction, like a signed Mo Sider jersey or a signed Dylan Larkin game used stick or a bunch of other things. Get tickets to the event, and I hope to see many of your smiling faces in that room. Brad, I want to say it was a couple weeks ago, or before this 4-game Red Wings win streak started. I think it was after the Anaheim OT loss. Yeah, so it would have been our episode on the 16th, that Wednesday night. You said to me, for Detroit to not fall out of it before an extremely tough December schedule starts, they have 4 games ahead against San Jose, Columbus, Nashville, and Arizona. And you think they pretty much have to grab 7 of those 8 points based on the quality of the teams and the tough schedule they have after that. I said to you, I don't know that with how they're playing right now that they'll even grab 5 or 6, even though I agree with the premise of it. The Red Wings grabbed 8 of a possible 8. 4 wins, 3 of them in regulation. So those go in the RW column. First of all, you were right because you thought they could. Second of all, what an important run by the Red Wings leading up to this December.
Again, it's easy to criticize the Red Wings for having a great record, but having a soft schedule. And we've repeated ad nauseum, you can only play your schedule. You get a run of weaker teams or a prolonged run of weaker teams, you have to capitalize. I mean, it's the NHL. Even bad teams are good more often than they're bad. Sometimes they just play poorly. Sometimes they play punch well above their weight. It's hockey. It's random. But looking at that schedule and looking at the Red Wings, yeah, they were the favorite in every game. And when you are coming up on a really tough stretch in an extremely tough division, you can't miss these opportunities. Because we talked about, the lost points in Anaheim and against Chicago earlier. They only lost 2 points between those 2 games, but you can't let that happen regularly.
Yeah.
4 for 4. It's perfect. It's what you could ask for. Now, the Red Wings don't have breathing room because Florida and Tampa are still right at their heels. Wow, imagine saying that sentence a year ago. Anyways, because Florida and Tampa are right at their heels, they now have some margin for error.
Yeah. To
not fall out of the playoff race before the New Year. So if they go through this tough stretch at like 500, they're not dead. Their season's not over. We're not talking about the trade deadline. We're not talking about the draft lottery. They're still very much in it, in all likelihood. I mean, again, it's a tough division. I would not be surprised to see 3 teams rattle off win streaks, but traditionally speaking, it's unlikely. Now, if the Red Wings can somehow have a plus points percentage this month, and by this month, I mean December upcoming, not only are they in a great spot for a run, they're in the driver's seat. Because if they can get through because I think they have games against Florida and Tampa coming up in this stretch, which will be, 4-point swings.
Yep.
And a couple other teams in conference that are going to be relevant to their playoff races. So, again, I don't expect the Red Wings to have a good month overall, just because as good as they've been playing, as good as Husso's playing, the talent discrepancy between them and a lot of the teams they're competing with, they are not on the favorable end of that. But they got a chance. They've got some margin for error, and they've got a huge opportunity to really cement themselves in this playoff race now. Because I know all the talk about American Thanksgiving, but we've talked about why the Red Wings schedule kind of makes that a false narrative for them this season. And, getting close to Christmas will be the true test. But
no decorations up. And out of respect to Evan, I'm waiting until December. So next episode, you will see that damn tree in here. But because Evan needs a break right now, I chose to not decorate quite yet.
Yeah, this is the time. But yeah, so I'm this is going to sound very pessimistic, but it's not meant to be. I'm not optimistic the Red Wings are going to have a good December, but I am super intrigued because I don't think this month is going to be the write-off like we probably would have thought it would have been before the season.
Yeah, looking at how the Red Wings won their 4 games, and I'm going to talk about the Arizona game in a second here, but they had the win against San Jose that wasn't perfect, but from the second period onwards, really they picked it up. The win against Columbus, which was a team they should dominate and did dominate in every way. The win against Nashville, which was on the back of Ville Husso, and against Arizona, like they battled through essentially what other teams have faced with Ville Husso this year with Vejmelka, where he essentially kept Arizona in it. They capitalized at the end when Detroit got into some penalty trouble, pulled their goalie, et cetera, et cetera. But they still pulled off the win. Like those are different kinds of wins, and it's very much the Red Wings need to find a way to win when they are not the best team on the ice, or they come up against some kind of hardship, or capitalize when they get those points. And it's a nice medley of them finding a way to do that each game. That said, like you just articulated, Brad, Toronto Monday night is going to be tough. Vegas Saturday night is going to be tough. Not to mention, like I'm skipping over Buffalo, Columbus. Those are weaker teams, but you can't take those for granted.
Can't take Buffalo for granted. Look what they did to Detroit already this season.
Yeah. Tampa, Florida, Dallas is a brutal run of games, and then Carolina after. Like we've talked about it a trillion times by now. Everyone knows how tough the December schedule is, and we're setting this arbitrary benchmark of like the 15th or the 22nd, whatever you want to call it. It's impressive even that the Red Wings are in a position to keep us talking about it right now, because if these last 4 games had gone differently, we wouldn't be talking about, December, they have some margin, like you said. We would be talking about, well, December is going to pile on to what's already a really shitty situation. So the Red Wings, credit to him, credit to Derek Lalonde, credit to the Detroit Red Wings, players elevating them to these victories. Larkin, Hronek, Husso, Copp deserves some credit lately. A bunch of those guys, they're in the conversation. And they're in the conversation not just among Red Wings fans, but across the league. People are wondering, is this real? You can't sit here and just say, it's not going to hold, so you can't be optimistic about it. No, like Derek Lalonde will be the first to say, I'm not thinking about playoffs right now. But the only option that the Red Wings have is to pretty much, and it sounds corny, but live in the moment, take it game at a time and see what you can execute and see what you can squeeze out. And who knows where we're going to be in a few weeks.
Yeah, like I said, I'm super intrigued to see how this month goes. And in regards to the 4-game win streak, it's probably worth mentioning because we've had streaks in years past where the Red Wings won on like a bunch of games on PDO benders or a hot goalie. The Red Wings were the better team in all 4 games. Like even the Nashville game, despite Nashville getting a lot of really good chances, Detroit still carried the play for most of the game. Detroit still outshot them. Detroit came on strong towards the end. They were the better team against San Jose. They were the better team against Columbus. They were the better team against Arizona. So they weren't fluky wins, which, again, you're expected to beat those teams, but when you do it and you do it without needing a good bit of luck, again, it's a positive sign.
Let's talk about the Red Wings win over Arizona. And a lot of these storylines are going to be pretty much the exact same as what we've seen. Like it's led by, I think, what was a solid performance from Ville Husso. Not perfect, but especially when it mattered, like in the shootout, it was the inverse of what we saw against Montreal. Husso was absolutely perfect. Andrew Copp ended up scoring the first goal, which I think was important. I mean, we talked last episode, and Max talked last episode about how Andrew Copp, it just doesn't add up that he's all of a sudden fallen off in such a way. Even when you look at, certain specific stats like face-off percentages, no one loses that much off their face-off percentage when they were a career consistent, significantly above 50% guy, and all of a sudden you're in the 40s. So Copp ended up opening scoring on the power play, which looked good that game. The shot came from Raymond. It deflected off a body, landed in front, and he cleaned it up in front, which is not the first time that we've seen Copp score that way. So, he's finding himself pretty valuable there in that slot or net front presence, somewhat on the power play. And I think, honestly, overall, just to talk about Andrew Copp for a second, one of his best games all season, and I think probably I would call it his best game as a Detroit Red Wing.
Yeah, we knew he was better than he was showing. We knew the injury was probably playing into it. We gave him maybe a bit more rope than he needed, but, whatever. It's early in a season, long season, and I think we all knew he was never going to be a scoring sensation. He wasn't going to be a 60, 70-point guy for the Red Wings. He was a versatile 200-foot guy who could fill in at the second-line center and maybe chip in a bit over a half a point per game. And that's what we've been seeing. That's what he looks like, and that's what he's been delivering. You could argue about, well, is that worth almost $6 million a year? Maybe. But he's been as advertised, which is good.
I think, he doesn't have to score every game and he doesn't have to have the counting stats all the time, but I think his counting stats have been deceptively good to this point, or at least sufficient, like you said, as advertised. As long as he can get incrementally better every game, and it's got to be tough for him, that's all I need to see from Copp this season. So I in my mind, I'm seeing enough to be pretty optimistic that that's going to happen. Detroit's second goal came from, again, just a blast from the past. Filip Hronek scored his moving away from the net on the left side 1T, opposite side of the net, and that was something that when Hronek was scoring earlier on in his career consistently and dangerously, it's not like the hardest slap shot in the world. It's not a laser beam, but it's just so perfectly placed, especially against a good goalie. You kind of need to do that. High degree of difficulty. I think, Brad, you can speak to that as well. It's an insanely hard shot to hit consistently. And we saw him do it for years without getting even close to the net, like launching that puck a mile up and over. But that was vintage Hronek once again. And he extended his goal streak to 4 straight games, which is matches the longest goal streak by a defenseman in Red Wings franchise history. Matthew Schneider did it in 05-06, Lidstrom did it in 2000-2001, and Reed Larson did it in 80-81. So pretty good company, and more red hot Hronek.
Red hot. And yeah, that one-timer was one of those plays that's more impressive than it looked. Because not only is it, hard to hit a one-timer with accuracy, especially moving as he was, and the fluidity of that play, but that pass went to his front foot, maybe even a little ahead of it. And most people tell you that's not where they want a one-timer in the best of scenarios, let alone the scenario where, he's skating into the puck. So he had to get his hands and his momentum in front of him, which is extremely hard in that scenario. And yeah, not only did he manage to get, good wood on it with accuracy again, that was a super difficult one-timer to pull off, and he did it perfectly.
Raymond, I think it was Lucas Raymond, said after the game, everything is going in for this guy. And it's true. You can never tell me hockey isn't a sport based on streakiness and emotions and a guy just feeling it. Stuff that's incredibly difficult to quantify and qualify. Hronek is feeling it. He's in the zone. He is absolutely, everything he touches turns to gold. And you don't need to compare him to anyone else other than Filip Hronek at this time last year even. How many times have we seen him take that shot and it just missed the net, hit a shin pad, wasn't the right time to take the shot, double clutched, whatever it might have been. This is Hronek feeling it. He has all the same tools he's had in the past. He's the same skill set, whatever. He's trying a lot of the same things, but it's just going in right now. It inspires a lot of confidence in that this is, I don't want to say permanent, we're always going to see him scoring every game. That's obviously not reasonable. But he's not doing things where I'm like, oh, Filip Hronek has never been that kind of player, so this will eventually go away. It inspires confidence that he can do this more or less often than he has been in the past, which is massive. Because if, your right D is Mo Seider and Filip Hronek playing like this, and whoever else you want to stick on that third pairing, that's a really good set of right-handed defensemen.
At a position that is not easily found in the NHL these days.
Yeah. We talked about this a lot last episode. Previous years, we would have seen a player play like this and say, oh my God, capitalize by trading him for the most you can now. You don't take those things off the table. The Red Wings are still far away from being a perennial Stanley Cup contender, far ways away. But they're also firmly in. You don't just get rid of good players for nothing or even for a pittance territory. Like, it would have to be an offer Yzerman can't refuse to get rid of Filip Hronek playing like this. And like you said, Brad, at a premium position. And he's cost controlled. They have him down for another year at 4.5 or something. And then he's an RFA upon expiry. So they have team control and another year of this good cap hit from Hronek. So really great to see. Jordan Osterley, who only scores bangers, decides, I want to be a defenseman and score too. Walks up just to the left of the net, top of the circle, and rips it on Vejmelka, who played a phenomenal game and got beat by Jordan Osterley. Like, that guy, the way he scores is always so funny. Like, I always find myself laughing my ass off. That was to make it 3-1 Red Wings. And that is actually the goal that gave Raymond and Bertuzzi both their second assists. So Bertuzzi, who has, had his warts since he's come back, it's nice to see him produce even in the background. We're not seeing vintage Bertuzzi or the best version of Bertuzzi quite yet, but it's good that he and Raymond picked up points that game and continued their counting stats. Game was, I think, firmly dominated by the Red Wings. They were the much better team. Shouldn't have been surprised. That Arizona is a team that they should dominate. I don't think Arizona's been the tire fire that we've all expected them to be this year, but Detroit's still the better team on paper and should have come in and had the win. But, oh man, Vejmelka is unreal. Like, he kept them in it for so long.
Goals saved above expected. He's top 5 in the NHL, I'm pretty sure, right now.
Jeez.
Like, he's not just, a goalie facing a ton of shots behind a bad team. He's legitimately making a difference for them, which might be a problem given what their ultimate goal is this season. So, hey, I mean, good on him.
And like I said earlier, like, this must be what the Red Wings opponents feel when Ville Husso steals a game. So Detroit, I think, controlled that game. They got into some late penalty trouble in the third, which has become a little bit of a habit. It's not the first time we've seen it. I understand their penalty kill has been good, but I would prefer to see them not put themselves in that position. Because what happened was, Arizona had all that pressure because of the power plays, like 2 consecutive or close enough together at the end of the third period, had the goalie pulled towards the end, and then there's only so much Ville Husso can do. He was making save after save after save, but eventually Arizona broke through with, I think, 26 seconds left, which was a bummer because at that point, that was Detroit's game to win. They should have really had that win in regulation. To nitpick, that should have been 3-2 in 60 minutes. Anyhow, another late goal against the Red Wings to send it to overtime. Overtime goes through. We go to the shootout. Every goalie, or Vejmelka and Husso saved the first 5 shots. Dylan Larkin, 6th shot. The LCA was rocking before he even went up to shoot. They know Dylan Larkin, the captain, has been playing absolutely out of his mind this season. Skates up, buries it, stick handles left side on Vejmelka, and the Red Wings win. And man, Red Wings fans are feeling that this team is different. They're feeling that this team is winning again, and they're feeling that this isn't like the last 5 seasons. And you can hear it in that one clip alone. Like, so many people sent me videos of themselves from the arena, and that place was just buzzing after Larkin got that game winner.
Well, the old hockey adage, winning cures all. Red Wings fans are finding out quickly that is very true. You can have flaws. You can have bad memories of recent history. Yeah. But it can turn, and it can turn quickly, especially when you're riding the good vibes 4-game winning streak. There's always something. For as gimmicky as the shootout is, there's some good drama to it when it happens, especially in a situation like that where it's like, all right, the game is literally on his stick. Yeah. And it's your captain, and it's a big moment in a season where you're turning around. Like, to steal a movie about a line from another movie, how can you not be romantic about hockey? Oh, man. There's always storylines like this, and it's been a long time since the Red Wings have been at the forefront of any of them. I've been listening to a couple other hockey podcasts. They're talking about, pretenders, contenders. A couple people have said, yeah, they don't think Detroit's real, but holy hell, do they hope they are? Yeah. It's a great story. Like, the team that's been the doormat of the Atlantic for the last 5-6 years finally starts punching back and has done it for more than a couple weeks.
You're totally right about like the storyline and building up to that moment and the drama of it, because we didn't see Larkin for the first two shooters. Nobody scored a single goal. It's a game where the Red Wings dominated. The crowd was into it, but they still didn't secure the win yet. And then before they showed Larkin, I'm like, yeah, this is going to be Larkin's shot. And like you said, it was on his stick. And it's just one of those moments out of a movie. I'm talking about like a middle of November, right? Shootout win against Arizona. Yeah. But it's one of those moments where the crowd knows that puck is going in. And Larkin knows it's going in. And he skated up and shot like he knew it was going in. It's the energy. I say the same thing when we see Red Wings fans in like San Jose or Nashville or wherever else, where the Red Wings have always traveled well in terms of fandom, and they have fans everywhere. But that kind of went dormant for a little while when the Red Wings have, I think scientifically speaking, sucked hard. And that's coming back now. And you see those fans, and it just makes me, it's the same feeling between that and the way the crowd is buzzing after a win like that. It's, again, this team is on the rise. I can't argue with people who have more of a national perspective where it's like, are the Red Wings real? Are they really going to be a divisional seed like that caliber team? Probably not, but it's fun as hell, man. And you hope to see them hang on for as long as they can. Something that Mickey Redmond talked about in that game was Filip Hronek. He showed a little defensive play from Filip Hronek where he had a good stop and then transitioned back up the ice. And that was a good demonstration of both aspects of Hronek's game that have been much better recently. I should qualify by saying I don't think Hronek is a defensive stalwart. He never will be. He's not going to be a shutdown defenseman, like, if you want to call Olli Maatta that. But he really has been a lot better at those little plays. We've talked about it before. He's done a little of the mill sider, like shutting the puck down in the neutral zone before it even crosses Detroit's blue line, stripping the puck as they try to break in, whatever it might be, and then immediately putting it to transition. And that, obviously, anyone who knows hockey knows that good offense starts with good defense. So it's paying dividends into his own game, but he really does look substantially better. And Mickey Redmond made a point to call out Bob Boughner, one of the associate coaches with the Red Wings, who has he manages the defense, and he has a strong defensive focus both in his coaching and his responsibilities with the Red Wings. So are we seeing the dividends paid from Bob Boughner's coaching for the Red Wings this season in Filip Hronek's game?
You'd have to think so. It's tough to say. So my honest answer is yes, probably. But I think most of the credit still here has to go to Hronek, because I know we talked about it when we were talking about Hronek in relation to playing with Olli Maatta. Hronek has this year seemed to have figured out when to pick his spots. He's reading the play better in front of him. So obviously coaching has to have something to do with that, whether it's he can play within the system a little easier, whether the system plays to his strengths a little more, whether Boughner's encouraging him to go out and try some things and do the things he's been doing, or if it's been the opposite, just, hey, simplify it, find the space and smash it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things you could point to that have improved or have evolved in Hronek's game, and we're never going to know whether that's all Hronek, Maatta, Boughner. The reality is it's probably a little bit of all three.
Oh, it's a combination of everything.
It's absolutely a combination of all three. So the perfect storm of, fixing a good player who was struggling.
Well, if that can continue to happen, like that is it's exactly what the Red Wings need, right? Because Derek Lalonde is a defensive-minded coach, first and foremost. He always talks about team defense, and the Red Wings overall have been buying in with much better team defense this year. But if that needs to be accentuated and supported by a strong actual defense. So if Bob Boughner is able to come in and make those waves, is it all Boughner? Is it all Maatta? Is it all Hronek? No. It's Jordan Osterley. No, I'm kidding. It is a bunch of different factors melding into one, and that's the way hockey works. But it can't just be, the forwards having more defensive responsibility. It needs to be the defensemen that the Red Wings have right now. Is it the best defensive roster in the league? Far from it. Far from it. But it's what they have. Much like you can only play the schedule you have, you can only play with the team that you have. And if Boughner can maximize or help to maximize what the Red Wings have, that is going to be points on the board in the standings. More on the Red Wings in just a moment. First, I want to tell everyone that this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast is proudly brought to you by NordVPN. Are you missing out on a game or your favorite show because it's not available in your region? Let me introduce NordVPN. Using NordVPN and a click of a button, you can watch and browse as if you're elsewhere in the world, making sure you never miss a game and can watch whatever content you'd like. No need to travel across the continent or oceans for your favorite team when NordVPN brings them right to you. With over 5,000 server options, no game or show is out of your reach. Using our special link, nordvpn.com/wingedwheel, you can receive a huge discount on NordVPN's cybersecurity 2-year plan, plus 4 free months. We all love to binge, but privacy is a big deal too. NordVPN keeps your information encrypted, so you never have to worry about your IP or location getting out. They've also doubled down on keeping you safe with their new threat protection feature. Say goodbye to intrusive website ads and malware. Even if you download an infected file, threat protection kicks in and deletes it before it makes a mess of your computer. Don't forget, there's no risk to you with their 30-day money-back guarantee. Give it a try, and if you like it, great. If you don't, they'll issue a refund, and you can pretend the entire thing never happened. Check out our special link, nordvpn.com/wingedwheel, to get your subscription started today. I know we made a lot of frequent flyer mile jokes about players to and from on the taxi squad and whatever other juniors coming up from Grand Rapids, but man, Magnus Hellberg. I imagine him a little bit like Tom Hanks in The Terminal, just never leaves the airport, although he does go from airport to airport. So between Detroit, Ottawa, and Seattle, just endlessly flying between those 3 cities. So the Red Wings reacquired goalie Magnus Hellberg from Seattle, who was put on waivers, and the Red Wings claimed him. So the Red Wings, who originally brought him over to the NHL from Europe, now get the goalie back. And it was interesting because the Red Wings still have Ville Husso and Alex Nedeljkovic, and they're both healthy as of right now, which begged the question, why? Why?
Why?
Here's the thing. Hellberg is a pro journeyman at this point. He's a guy who can come in and fill a gap, but probably not be a mainstay in net until he gets probably a bigger opportunity, and that just hasn't come up. So there's a reason why he keeps getting waived, and there's a reason why he keeps getting claimed. He's just in that in-between period. And you've seen goalies break out of that and find themselves sticking in the NHL, and you see goalies who just do that and fizzle out or eventually become career AHLers or whatever it might be. And Hellberg is kind of in that area of flux. But let's talk about what this means for the Red Wings and what their plan is. So let's look at the Grand Rapids Griffins. Actually, first of all, Hellberg's sweet Red Wings pads aren't actually here right now, Max reported, which is super disappointing. But in Grand Rapids, they have Olkinuora and Brattstrom. The performances haven't been good. It's just not been good stats. I think as of a few days ago, Brattstrom had a 405 goals against average and an 874 save percentage, and Olkinuora had a 421 goals against average and 858 save percentage. Olkinuora especially, I get the sense that the team isn't too keen on right now with his performances. He was essentially similar to Hellberg, really, just a more seasoned veteran goalie who knew how to win games and do all that, was brought in to stabilize the Grand Rapids net a little bit. So you think, okay, Hellberg is here to go down to Grand Rapids, but he would have to clear waivers. Very obviously, this is a guy who is good enough to get claimed on waivers, doesn't make it through very easily, and Ottawa and Seattle will tell you all about that. So what's the plan?
Great question. I don't know.
And I actually think that's the right answer.
Yeah. So in the short term, this is one of the very, very few benefits to the boatload of injuries the Red Wings have had, is that they're not healthy scratching 3 guys every night because they don't have enough players to healthy scratch 3 guys every night, so they can.
Well, last game they did. They healthy scratched.
Counting Hellberg, though.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
That's counting Hellberg.
Right.
Because normally teams won't carry 3 goalies at the NHL.
No.
So it's very rare you'd ever see a goalie be a healthy scratch. And right now it's just Hag and Lindstrom. And let's be honest, after their run this year, they're not going to see a lot of run for the rest of the year. So
they have to have injuries to make it in consistently.
Exactly. And so Hellberg can hold that spot until I think Soderblom's probably the closest to coming back, and he might even go to Grand Rapids before Hellberg just for conditioning or to get up to speed. I don't know. But he's waiver exempt. So there's a reality here where the Red Wings could carry Hellberg as a third goalie for a while.
Yeah.
Just in case something happens to Husso or Nedeljkovic, or, the really long shot, a trade comes up or whatever. There's a million reasons you could carry a third goalie for a while. I do think that they probably want Hellberg for Grand Rapids. That seems like the most obvious answer. But again, like you said, comes with the huge caveat of he'd have to clear waivers, which doesn't seem overly likely at this point. So maybe, Stevie in his infinite wisdom is waiting for like this precise moment where he's like, all right, nobody's getting claimed right now because of reasons X, Y, and Z, and tries to slide him through. I don't know.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of possibilities here. I think the Red Wings have the benefit of time on their side, so they will likely use it and just carry three goalies for a while. And then, when push comes to shove roster-wise, whether that's, a couple players coming back or whatever it might be, then they make a decision. But right now, yeah, I think the legit answer is, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. This was an opportunity that came up. Lalonde said that Yzerman said there's a lot of hockey coming up. We need some kind of insurance in case, Husso or Ned goes down. A lot of hockey coming up means a lot of wear and tear on these guys, and they're going to be tough games too. Like we've talked about it a lot, but again, let's reiterate what's coming up for the Red Wings. They got Toronto on Monday night, Buffalo on Wednesday, Vegas, and then Columbus, Tampa, Florida, Dallas. Like they're going to see a lot of shots, and we know how important the month of December is. You only have to listen to any random 3-minute segment of this podcast to know that. So yeah, it's a player who could be useful, especially considering what they have coming up for their roster. They don't have to do anything with him in terms of playing him. They don't have to waive him. They can carry him, like you said, Brad, because they have the space to do that with all the injuries and room to healthy scratch and carry him on the 23-man. But the end result of this might be they eventually have to try waiving him and they lose him and they go, well, it's not a big grand plan. There's no, you can never know for certain with Steve Yzerman, but there's no big trade in the works. There's no hidden nagging injury that we didn't know about. It's just, yeah, Hellberg is good insurance right now, and let's see where it goes. So it makes sense in that it's not anything too substantial. I hope to see him just because of the pads. Sweet name, but the pads are unreal.
Yeah, that's the important thing here, truly.
Okay, let's look at the playoff picture. We'll start with the Red Wings, who are in a third divisional seed for the Atlantic. So they're in the third seed. Boston, who's only lost 3 times all season, which is absolutely unreal.
Really, really getting hindered by that slow start everybody predicted.
Well, sweetheart schedule, but at the same time, they've been a fantastic team. There's no denying that at all. 18-3. Toronto has played pretty good hockey of late. I think they're 6-1-3 in their last 10, and then Detroit's in that third seed. Actually, I want to read out some stats here that Max Bultman, M_Bultman on Twitter, he pulled up to give some context for the Red Wings season. So if you're wondering why people are still so, and us included, especially even, are still so, hey, this is really great, we hope to see this continue, but the Red Wings are likely to fall out of a strong playoff contention. The Red Wings special teams right now doing great. Power play 12th in the NHL. It's been a long time since the Red Wings have had a power play looking like that. Penalty kill, fantastic, 6th in the NHL. You've been able to see that all year for the most part. After 20 games at even strength, Detroit's 5-on-5 expected goals share is 25th in the NHL. And their 5-on-5 offense overall is 30th. So, anytime they do really well 5-on-5, for the most part, it does seem to be propped up by goaltending or a random one-off big game. But there's only so far your special teams can take you. So that's why. But right now, the Eastern playoff picture looks like Boston, Toronto, Detroit, New Jersey, Islanders, and Carolina in the Metro, and the wild card spots are Tampa and Pittsburgh. 25 points each. But New York has 24 points, Florida 23, Montreal 23, Washington 21. And I think they are all, that's tight. That Eastern Conference is a bloodbath, and it's going to get jumbled up a lot. New York, Florida, Montreal, Washington, and if you want to go down as far as Philly even, which of those make it in, do you think?
New York and Florida seem like the strongest contenders. I know Florida's got really strong underlyings. The Rangers, I mean, pretty self-explanatory there. Now, that doesn't mean those spots have to come at the expense of Detroit. Detroit's one of the likelier candidates when you look at the 8 playoff seeds right now. But yeah, I have a hard time envisioning a team with Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider, Shesterkin, Fox isn't getting in the playoffs. Florida, again, a lot of very obvious reasons. You know, they could bounce an Islanders and a Penguins, and the Red Wings hold on to a playoff spot. So this isn't meant to be doom and gloom, but that is two very legitimately good NHL teams who are probably going to knock teams out of the playoffs. So of the 8 playoff teams, nobody outside of like Boston right now can probably feel all that comfortable. Red Wings obviously included. So again, they've put themselves in a position where they don't have a ton for room for margin of error, but they have some.
Yeah.
And that's critical right now. So yeah. And even I was watching Rangers versus Oilers. Man, you can just see those shifts when everything starts to click for them. It's unreal. Like, that team should not be that far down the standings. And it's early in the season. There's a lot of random things that affect everything. You know, strength of schedule really plays a heavy part into standings at this point of the year. And, you know, cold streaks, hot streaks can look a little more profound than they actually are. But yeah, it's going to be hard to keep those two in particular down.
I think the crux of it is exactly what you said. No team that has Shesterkin and then the 11 other great players that you named is likely to miss the playoffs. You could have stopped at Shesterkin. I would have said, yeah, you're absolutely right. The Islanders right now in that second Metro seed, like, Sorokin is just absolutely unreal.
Oh yeah, he doesn't get the credit he deserves for how good he is. Because, you know, I think it's not only is he overshadowed by other great goalies in the East, not only is he overshadowed by other great goalies in the Metro, he's just getting overshadowed because of another great goalie in New York.
Yeah. If Sorokin was the one playing at MSG this season, he would have a ton more credit, but he has been phenomenal.
For 2 years now, this isn't a fluke.
No.
This isn't an outlier, Sorokin. He is that guy.
Yeah. Montreal, Washington, I don't know. Goal differential is something that you can look at to kind of get a little bit of a picture of how this season has gone. You're almost a quarter of the way in, or past the quarter mark, actually. So it's not, I think, too early to start establishing those things. So even if you don't want to get into the underlying numbers, you know the teams that are, I think, a little bit more serious contenders. But hey, a lot can change. Key injuries, teams have turned it on halfway through the season before. St. Louis is always going to be the case that's used for that. But the East is this is the closest and deepest the playoff race has been for a long time. You know, the fact that I just named Detroit and the Islanders as maybe 2 divisional seeds that could get bounced out, like, it's fantastic entertainment for the season. Over in the West, the Central has Dallas, Colorado, and Winnipeg, and I don't think Winnipeg's been getting enough credit this season for what they're doing. In their divisional seeds, the Pacific has Vegas, who's been absolutely fantastic to start their season, especially relative to last year. Seattle in a second divisional seed in LA. Edmonton and St. Louis are in the wildcard spots. Minnesota tied with them in points. Calgary, 21 points. Nashville, 20. Vancouver, 19. Even Arizona is only 5 points out. The West also has some interesting storylines, and I think a lot of teams out of place in my mind that they probably should, based on, you know, the talent on paper, be a little higher.
The East is entertaining because it is a whole hell of a lot of good, high quality, top end hockey being played. The West is tremendous entertainment because almost everybody sucks and anything goes.
Yeah.
Like, obviously there's a handful of teams that have really established themselves in the West, but once you get past the top 4 or 5 teams, all bets are off for anything, and it makes for some excellent storylines, some crazy entertainment, and a lot of unpredictability, which is what you love. I mean, one of us had Dallas and Winnipeg making the playoffs in our preseason predictions. But
Were you the only one who had Winnipeg in?
Yeah. I don't even know if you guys had Dallas. Like your Central was very different because you guys were still believers in Nashville, which I wasn't. And I think you guys were bigger on St. Louis than I was. I can't remember for the life of me, but I know I went out on a limb because I refused to bet against Connor Hellebuck too many times in a row. And so far, he's probably the front runner for Vezina.
It's going to be devastating if I had neither Dallas nor Winnipeg.
I mean, it's early. It's way too early to be doing a victory lap. And let's be honest, Winnipeg's not the strongest roster. And if Connor Hellebuck even turns back into a human, they're going to have some problems. Dallas looks like a wagon, though. Like, Ben and Sagan have not gotten back to form, but significantly improved over previous years. They might have one of the best lines in hockey with Jason Robertson's line with, was it Rope Hintz and Joe Pavelski. Then they got Heiskanen, Ottinger. That's a team. That's a team that could make a lot of noise playoff time. But
I just looked it up. I didn't have them in.
Didn't have Dallas in?
No, I had them. Yeah, mine is the worst. My Central's easily the worst out of us three. I had them at 5th and 6th. I had Nashville and Minnesota a lot higher.
I think I had Minnesota up there too, and maybe we should have seen the cliff coming.
Yeah.
What did I probably had them at 2nd, knowing me.
Well, let's look at Edmonton and look at Minnesota. Those strike me as teams that are going to want to make moves to solidify their place in. I know Minnesota has that weird cap hell going on.
They actually have cap space, though.
They do.
They actually have some cap space.
They have some cap space to play with. Edmonton needs to capitalize on every single year that they have McDavid and Draisaitl.
Edmonton needs a save.
Yeah, of course. What's new? They're missing Evander Kane, and it's been reported that they're looking for someone to fill in. Evander Kane's, he had that horrific cut to his wrist. Look, I'm not trying to just drum up something out of nowhere. You're telling me Ken Holland's not going to kick tires on Tyler Bertuzzi? Absolutely, he's going to. Ken Holland is a GM who works on familiarity. He's looking for someone to fill in Evander Kane's player archetype, someone who plays with some edge but can produce. He is absolutely going to call about Tyler Bertuzzi. 100%.
Well, since you went there, let's lean into the crazy. Everything's connected, Ryan. This is why the Red Wings got Magnus Hellberg. That team needs a save. That team needs a goal. Nedeljkovic, Bertuzzi for what?
I don't... Like
Dylan Holloway in a first. Let's get weird.
What? Yeah, oh my God, that'd be an incredible return.
Oh, it absolutely would be. Filip Hronek.
Would you?
Probably.
Holland will label Holloway as a no-go. Probably. Although that list gets short. If you think you're in a cup window or you need to be competitive and you're running out of years to maximize on Draisaitl and McDavid's performance and contracts, your no-go list, your non-starter list should shrink. Some GMs try to have their cake and eat it too, and a lot of them do. Some of them even successfully. But if you're giving up, Tyler Bertuzzi in a trade or, Ned even, which I don't think Ned is going to fetch a lot right now based on his performance. Holloway would be one of the starting asks in the package. I would be surprised if Edmonton even got rid of Broberg, though. Like that.
Well, we know what a reputation for his wild trades at the deadline Ken Holland has. Yeah. Just going out there all in for superstars like Eric Cole and Marek Zidlichki.
Thank you for entertaining my tinfoil hat theory. Anyways, the playoff race right now is in both divisions or in both conferences is, I think, impressively entertaining.
It's a little more diverse than it was last year.
Yeah. We'll see where it goes. It's not just fun from a Red Wings perspective. And the more teams that struggle, the better news it is for Detroit. Okay, speaking of Seattle, Shane Wright in the AHL with the Firebirds has been phenomenal. Just let the kid play, man. It's the easiest solution. I get it. Seattle's job is to go out there and win games. They're in a divisional seed right now. Like, they absolutely are not just throwing the season and saying, oh, we can play Wright or we can play players who we think can't slot into the lineup because it doesn't matter whether we win or lose. No, as of right now, they're in the playoffs in their second season. But you got to find room for Wright. If he stays in the AHL, that's totally fine. But you just can't have him riding the bench or sitting in the box. Like, kid's got to play. He's one of the key pieces of the future of that team. He's your solution down the middle, alongside Matty Beniers for hopefully their entire careers. You got to have him play, especially considering his missed year due to COVID. It can't be surprising that he's doing this in the A right now.
4 goals in 3 games. Weird how that works out.
Yeah.
We, as Red Wings fans, are acutely aware of the drawbacks of the NHL-CHL agreement with, where Michael Rasmussen was at in his development and definitely needed AHL time before he was allowed to play in the AHL, and that looks like that is exactly the case with Shane Wright here. There needs to be an amendment to this rule. Like, okay, fine, if you're like a first-round pick or a top 15 pick and you don't make the NHL, then you're eligible for the AHL, because this kid sat 9 out of 10 games before he went to the AHL. I know they're in a good spot now timing-wise, because by the time his 5 or 2 week stint or whatever it is in the AHL is up, they'll have 1 game against Montreal, and then he'll probably have to be off to Team Canada camp for the World Juniors, and then they can, that buys them a lot of time to decide what they want to do with him, which is probably go to the OHL. I know people have been talking that, Kingston sucks this year, and they don't want to send him to the OHL until Kingston facilitates a trade for his rights so that he could go to, a Peterborough, Kitchener, London, someone that could make a run this year, and then Wright can be playing some meaningful high-level hockey, and a lot of hockey at that, and play with some players who up to his caliber. I think Windsor might even be a good option for Shane Wright this year.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
So there's a lot of moving parts here, but yeah, whatever Seattle's plan is, the ultimate plan this year should just be, where is he going to play the most games? And at this point, the league almost doesn't matter.
Well, they're fortunate that they get to kick the can down the road, but it's going to be a story eventually. File this under, again, good problems to have for Seattle, but I don't think it's all happy-go-lucky, because I think Shane Wright's development is so crucial. So crucial, especially consider the timing he's missed. Some other NHL news before we get to overtime here. Just very quickly, Rachel Dory, who was a former employee of the Vancouver Canucks, was let go not too long ago, and it's been kind of a mystery as to why. It doesn't seem to be an amicable situation. Everyone's been very hush-hush about it. Rachel Dory just actually posted, while we were recording something, a filing of I believe it's technically classified as a human rights complaint against the Vancouver Canucks, in which she alleges that Emily Castonguay and the Vancouver Canucks and various members of management are liable for discriminatory actions against Rachel Dory. So if what's detailed here is true, this is going to be very messy for the Vancouver Canucks. What's outlined here is essentially like a false or misguided accusation of sharing information with a reporter, various other things in terms of mental and physical wellness of Rachel Dory. Of course, this is just kind of the first domino to fall in terms of what's publicly been posted about this. So we haven't heard Vancouver's side, but as of right now, it's not going to be a small story. And man, everything out of Vancouver seems to be controversy. It has been for so long. When was the last time that this story about that team was about, anything other than something messy from ownership, from management, from whatever it might be? So we don't know how this one's going to play out. We know only what's been posted by Rachel here. So we'll follow this one and see where it goes. Okay, let's jump into overtime here on this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast, and we are going to start with our Patreon supporters. Patreon.com/wingedwheel podcast. If you want to support the Dub Club, so-called, you get access to our Patreon exclusive overtimes that we record right after this, which are way more loose. I take all the rules away from Brad and Evan, and they have fun with it. We all have fun with it. It's a really good time. We also have an immense number of giveaways. We are giving away 2 tickets to every Red Wings home game this season, and the majority of them go directly to Patreon supporters. Right now, actually, at this very moment, is a giveaway for 2 tickets to the Leafs Red Wings game. So that's a big ticket, and it's going to patrons. Also, you get access to the Winged Wheel Podcast Discord, which is just a fantastic community and ongoing, all the time chat going on about the Red Wings podcast. And we have other channels. We added a World Cup channel so people can chat there. It's a good time. So patreon.com/winged wheel podcast. All right, let's start with this one from Coyote Season Tickets in Tempe. Says there's a reason that many people don't know what goalie interference is. It's because the NHL has completely redefined the word interference when it comes to goaltenders. The league has essentially made incidental contact a reason to take goals off the scoreboard. If the goalie strays from the blue paint, he shouldn't be fair game. However, he shouldn't automatically get an absolution from contact from other players trying to get a puck they have every right to play. I believe that once a goalie moves beyond the paint, goalie interference should only be called when a player makes contact with the goalie with the intent of preventing the goalie from reestablishing position in front of the net. In short, incidental contact and interference are not the same on open ice, and that shouldn't change anywhere that's outside of the blue paint. I'm fine with making blue paint area larger for bring some clarity and consistency to this issue. That's an interesting suggestion, making the crease bigger.
Please no.
That I do think that would be fixing one issue and opening up a lot of other ones, just making more areas where you can't touch the goalie or be, near the net.
If you make the crease bigger, there would have to be a rule amendment that says if a player makes contact with the goalie anywhere outside of that blue paint, it is not taking a goal off the board. Like, if you're giving the goalies more room to roam and they are completely and 100% safe within the blue, then they are complete. Like, I'm not saying they should get run. Like, I'm not saying they're open season, not in that context. But if a player's skating past the crease and the goalie's outside the crease and his skate runs into the goalie's skate and puts the goalies on his ass, okay, then that would count. I don't like this. I don't want to do that. The goalie interference rule is bad, but it's not all that unclear right now. Sean McIndoe, Down Goes Browns, done a lot of stuff with goalie interference over the years, and he's cleared up a few things, namely, if there is even incidental contact in the crease, the benefit of the doubt 99 out of 100 times goes to the goalie. If your foot is in blue and you just ever so slightly brush one of the goalie's ass hairs, the goal is coming off the board. Outside the blue, that's where the water gets a little murkier these days. But the NHL has established the precedence that they are very sensitive on the topic. And if you at all impede the goalie's ability to make the save, it's coming off the board. Unless your team directed the opponent into your goalie. So however slight it might be, it's coming off the board. Now, fundamentally, I disagree with that as the rule stands. But that is exactly how they are calling it.
Okay, let's take one here from Matthew Guess, who says, when will you start to change your mind about the Seider and Sherratt pairing? Just needing more time to figure things out. The team's D game has improved over the past 6 to 7 games, analytically speaking, but the Sherratt-Seider pairing has not shown too many improvements. Seider has begun to shine, sure, but those two as a pair are just not good together, and I feel like this is being underappreciated and looked at with rose-colored glasses, since it's simply a big Yzerman move taking Sherratt on a long contract. I personally think the reason is simple. The styles are just not good together. Seider needs a reliable defender, not a guy who goons people. Seider is not soft on the ice. He doesn't need Sherratt's style of game. So, Matthew, I think I agree a lot with what you're saying. I think what we're probably seeing here is an incompatibility of play styles. I don't think that just the fact that Yzerman signed this guy is why anyone, is saying that it's good. Because defensively, we've talked about it at length. It's not been good defensively. Giving it time, would I have wanted to see a change by now? Yes, but that's not considering how good Mata and Hronek have been. And that's the real big hang-up, and I would bet that's a real big hang-up with the Red Wings. It's part of it is just understanding that the Red Wings are not going to move Sherratt down to the third pair, at least not anytime soon. And you don't want to break up that Mata Hronek pairing based on A, how Hronek is thriving off of it, and B, the fact that by some numbers it's one of the more effective pairings in the entire NHL. So they're kind of locked in place. I see lower down, Matthew, you suggest moving Wallman up with Seider. I actually really like that idea. I just want to kind of see how it works. Max talked about it too, but it's kind of a catch-22. Are you really going to pull in Sherratt 20 games into his Red Wings career, paying him that much money over that much term, and he's on the third pairing 21 games in? Is it the right move? There's a really strong argument for it. I would probably argue in favor of at least trying it. I agree with you, Matthew. I would call it one of the more unlikely roster moves that you could project on defense this season. This isn't a good problem to have. It's a little bit complicated, but they're going to need to. I think they're going to give a lot of runway to see if they can figure it out and see if Seider can adjust his game, and even Sherratt as well. I don't think the onus just needs to be on Seider.
I've been a proponent of this not being a pairing since before they played together. Not that I was saying there was a better option, and this was obviously before we knew the Mata Hronek thing, but I had my reservations about Sherratt. He's come pretty much as advertised. We were hoping it would work with Seider. It still might work with Seider. I really like the way Jake Wallman's playing. I don't give a crap about contracts. If you think something's better, do it. If, Ben Sherratt's making whatever, almost over $16 million on this contract. If he has to do it on the third line, I don't think his life's over. I think, he can make it work.
Oh, it's not about the player.
I think he can make it work. What this question ultimately comes down to is how much runway is too much runway for you? Am I upset that we're 20 games into the season and they haven't tried anything else yet? No, because I don't think 20 games is a huge runway. I think there's definitely more time that they could give to this and it not be detrimental. I think December is going to be the catalyst here, because if they are in this tough part of their schedule and this pairing, continues to struggle, probably worse than they have been just because their quality of competition is going up, that's probably when you start throwing some other things at the wall. I mean, there were moments last year where Osterley and Seider looked capable. Not good, but capable. Wallman has come to the Red Wings better than advertised. Maybe he's the guy that goes over there. I don't know what the option is. Obviously, Mata is the best option, but you're not breaking up that pairing. You're just not. It's working. You make something else work, and you leave Mata and Hronek alone.
Maybe Mata is the best option in theory.
In theory, yeah. But yeah, I'm at the point I don't care if they do or don't change it, because again, it's been a pretty short runway. Should I be using that example after a plane went off the runway right near my house this week?
Did it really?
Yeah, 737.
And it missed you?
Yeah, just barely. Like, it ended up in my front yard. It's like a redneck's house now. Instead of car parts, I got plane parts. But I think there's a lot of time for this to still be worked out.
Yeah, I don't want to say I'm not concerned. I am, but it's just one of those things where it's like, are the Red Wings really going to do anything other than give it more time? I'm torn. Like I mentioned before, but it's a fair criticism. It's not been good, and if you're going to pay a guy that much that early, we said, to come into the season, not counting Copp's injury, but Copp and Sherratt, the expectation should be there for them right away. Copp's injury changed things a little bit, but for Sherratt as well. So when you're evaluating Sherratt, has he been effective in his own game? Depends on what you're looking at, but has he been effective in the role they've put him out in? There's been some to be desired there. And there's also, I think Seider just didn't have a good start to the season too. Like, we can't pin anything bad that ever happens to Mo Seider on other players as well. He needed time to really refine his game, but that is going to be an ongoing discussion. Lars Thorzel says, "Hey boys, once we're closer to injury free, the team will face some difficult decisions. Can Fabry and Zadina reclaim spots as everyday players? Can you demote Jonathan Berggren, who has 5 points in 7 games and looks good? I would bet that Fabry gets, as long as Fabry is rust free, like they're going to ease him in. So I don't think he's going to take top 6 minutes or anything. They'll ease him in, and he has enough goodwill, and he's been effective as a Red Wing, more or less. So he'll get his time. I have a hard time seeing Zadina forcing the issue. If Berggren's playing as he is right now, I think Zadina will be in a tough spot with either tough minutes or in the press box more often than he would like. That said, you don't know what the injury status is going to be. You don't know if the Red Wings will ever be fully healthy. You know, teams always have a rolling amount of injuries. If they do get to fully healthy, Zadina is going to have to make a lot out of a little to outcompete, Berggren, Soderblom, Fabry, whoever else is there. He doesn't have a good foundation to work off of. All right, let's take a question here. Let's go to Reddit, actually. Let's take a couple of Reddit questions to wrap up. Background Junket 35 says, at what point does Larkin not being signed become really worrisome?
Yeah, that window's closing quicker than I think we like to admit, because we're only 3 months from the trade deadline.
I said preseason, if we're going into 2023 with no Larkin contract, I am significantly concerned. I'm already concerned. I think any Red Wings fan who's nervous right now, it's perfectly fair for them to be nervous.
I'm nervous, but not to the point where it's keeping me up at night. But we're getting close.
Yeah,
if Santa Claus doesn't drop a new contract to Dylan Larkin's house this Christmas, we're going to start asking some questions.
In every single game he plays, there's a bigger chorus of pay the man. The shootout winner. Everyone's like, pay the man. He's playing excellent two-way hockey, pay the man. He's producing, whether it's with Raymond, whether it's with Bertuzzi, whether it's with Kubalik, whatever, pay the man. On games where there's nothing going offensively for the Red Wings, Larkin comes in and does it, pay the man. That diving through Arvidsson's legs save that he had to steal a point for the Red Wings against the Kings, pay the man. So I understand people saying it. The issue is he don't know what he's asking for. If he's asking for 10.5, I understand why they're at a crossroads here, but it's getting a little bit anxious. Lord of Finessing says, who do you think will win the World Cup? Oof. You know what? Let's say Spain. Well, yeah, maybe. Certainly not Canada. It started out good for them today, but then ended up losing 4-1 to Croatia. England and USA tied, which England was, riding over, and the USA was riding over in the other direction. Like that was a win for the States. It was an uneventful game, but good on the States for hanging in there with England. Yeah, I'll go Spain. It's a cheap answer, but Calgary Cheek Clapper says, been wondering about this all year. What's the general opinion on constant line juggling? I just wonder to what extent players need time to gel and be their most effective. Wings fans are no strangers to line juggling from Blashill days, but Lalonde seems to have a particularly short leash. I love Lalonde, and I don't have a solid opinion one way or another. Would love to hear your thoughts. I think as things have worked, they've stuck. Like, we've seen the defensive pairing stick, and that's been anchored by Mata and Hronek. The third pair has changed a lot, and the first pair has stayed as it is out of necessity, really. But, the most recent iteration of the top six has stuck because the Red Wings were not finding scoring when they needed it, and finally they were able to. I think that Columbus game really drove it home. But, yeah, it's Copp, Raymond, and Bertuzzi on that second line. Perron, Kubalik, and Larkin on the first line. So I think it's a normal amount of line movement for a team that's not producing. If the lines weren't being juggled, then the Red Wings would have better 5-on-5 offense, and I wouldn't have read out that max stat.
I'm generally not a fan of line juggling because, chemistry is a very real thing, and you need some to be able to pick up on your line mates' habits, timing, etc. There's two reasons in my mind where you legitimately need to juggle the lines. One, injuries. You don't have a choice. You have to. And two, if you're not scoring. And on both those points, the Red Wings, giant yes. So lots of line juggling needed still.
All right, last question here before we wrap up from Detroit Rob, who says, do you foresee any scenario in which we are buyers at the trade deadline? I'll stop chugging my Kool-Aid soon enough. I can think of a couple of very specific ones. We keep talking December. Let's say the Red Wings make it out of December with a really good winning record. They beat tough teams. They're still in divisional seed heading into the new year, or firmly in a wild card spot. They're in it. And the Red Wings are in the mix where, it's no longer talking about, oh, this won't hold. It's we just need to have a run good for the rest of the season around the trade deadline, around, that late February, early March area. And they're like, yeah, we just need to run good and we'll squeeze in because such and such teams. Florida has fallen off, as has Pittsburgh. In that situation, I could see the Red Wings evaluating, did we have a key injury at center, or are we missing some solid lefty because so-and-so is out? I can see them buying there. I can see them getting an offer they can't refuse for a player like Bertuzzi or Hronek, but that means they want to replace that player in terms of effectiveness for the rest of the season. So they might try to buy a rental as a stopgap. It's not impossible. I can absolutely see it. They might look at what Olli Maatta is doing on the left side and say, we want a version of that from Mo Seider, and we'll buy a little bit of a better version of Olli Maatta. I don't know if that exists on the market, but they might try to do that too. I wouldn't call it likely, but I wouldn't call it a 0% chance like we would have any of the last 5 or 6 seasons. I don't know. Am I crazy, Brad?
This is could they, should they? And could they? Yeah, I could see the reality. Give the team a bit of a boost and reward them for a good season to that point. Injuries could be a factor. Could be a lot of reasons why they could justify buying at the deadline.
Yeah.
Should they? No. I have a hard time seeing a scenario where the Red Wings should be buying at this deadline. Ignoring hey, we're paying a 6th round pick to fill a hole on our 4th line, bottom pair D. Okay, those trades are so insignificant. Who cares? But in terms of being giving up any appreciable asset for a rental at the deadline should not happen for the Red Wings this year. Again, under almost any circumstance, because I've been a vocal proponent since the early days of this podcast. You only give up appreciable assets at the deadline if it is for a player who is going to be on your team for many years to come, or you are a legitimate Stanley Cup contender, not playoff team, Cup contender. Which, could I see the Red Wings making the playoffs this year? Absolutely. Could I see Husso getting hot and the Red Wings stealing around? Absolutely. Do I see the Red Wings winning a Stanley Cup this year? Good God, no. No, absolutely not. So you save those assets because you might need them next year at the deadline or the year after. Look at what happened to Florida now. They were a legit Cup contender, but they kind of went a little overboard, and now they have almost nothing left to give up for when they need to buy at the upcoming deadlines. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to say, oh, yeah, the Red Wings have had a ton of second-round picks. There's a ton of those guys in the system. It's okay if we give up a second-round pick this year. You might need to pick this guy and trade him at next year's deadline when you're a much better team. If the Red Wings swing a huge trade in the offseason and all of a sudden, let's say they've got a second Dylan Larkin on the team, yeah, you're probably in a window to buy then, and you want to have as many assets as possible. Then all of a sudden, your system's not absolutely in the tank if you trade a Johansson, a Wallinder, whoever. Yeah. So, again, could I see it? Yeah. Should they? No.
I have so much Ryan's bullshit energy, which Mel will tell you all about, that I want to throw at you right now, but we should probably wrap up this episode. Folks, thanks for tuning into the Winged Wheel podcast. If you're a new listener, welcome to the show. There's usually one more of us meatheads here. If you're a listener of old, thank you so much for supporting us for so long. We'd like to thank the sponsors of this episode, NordVPN, nordvpn.com/wingedwheel to get that great discount. And we'd like to thank all of our Patreon supporters. You all have blown us away with your support. Thank you so much. We hope to see everyone at Hot Stove Stories featuring Mick and Ken on Thursday, December 1st. And be sure to grab your Winged Wheel Podcast, Mickey Redmond style flannel at wingedwheelpodcast.com/shop before they're gone again. We'd like to thank our name level supporters on Patreon: Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Armchair GM / Genius, Nick Perks, Terry Driver, the number 69, Cryan Ryan Hannes Banana Slam at Jamathon, Glenn Brabham, Matthew M. Rice, Croner's Left Knee, Brandon M., Carl, Brutina Nanoluski, Chimmy, Chris Ball, Chris P., Citizen High Five, Connor Scovey, Coyote Season Tickets in Tempe, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Evan Lob Singing, Mash Bringing, Hash Slinging Slasher, Philip Zadina, the Prophet of the Second Pair, Right D. Filip Hronek, Give Blood a Fight Probert, Red Hot Hronek, Hassam Al Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Joseph Barry, Kalen Wood, Kevin James, King Tone, Las Ensaladas Picantes, Marcus, Matt McKay, Nedeljkovic, goalie number 1, Nicholas Fritz, R.A., Ryan Hubbard, Scott Martin, Send It Sea Wolf, The Podcasting Couch, Zachary Rogers, General Andy Bohan of the Cheeseback Army, Sam Bankson, number 1 Detroit Red Guys fan, Adam, I Wish I Could Finish Like Ernie, Antonio Gracias, Babe Landeskog, Ben Barron, Brad Simmons, Brian Vasha, Connor Leighton, Darren Fick, Dave W., Philip Zadiz Nuts, HRONEK'S Handlebar, James Laporte, Jeremiah Dobo, J.M. Rhapsody, John Evans, John Ingalls, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Logan Burgos, Matt Keeler, Matt S., Loyal Soldier of the Cheesebag Army, Maximilian, Melissa Erickson, Ophelia, Papa Woody, Reed Baldwin on behalf of the Reed Baldwin Foundation, Thick Rick, and Aaron Hudson. Thank you all so much, and we will talk to you on Thursday this week.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockeytown Evan.